What's going on? This your boy Off Take Jay. Obviously, you guys call me James, of course. You know, this is what Take for Take podcast. The Spurs have arrived. San Antonio eliminates OKC and advances to the NBA Finals. So, the Spurs have not been in the finals since 2014, right? So, if you wonder why I'm sitting here just thinking or made the video earlier, before anyone starts calling, I guess we were rooting for the Spurs. Obviously, for me, my pick was OKC to win because it's the champs. But I wouldn't be too far removed saying that this is really shocking, right? Like I expected it to go to 6 or 7, of course, and you know what? Nowadays, with the swap of the apron, which people talk really bad about, we have now had constant different champs almost every year. There's barely been even back to back. So for me, OKC was a pick for me because if there was one team that was going to go back to back, and they would be the team to do it. I was a believer that could still be the thing. You catch me on record saying that I don't. As long as this apron still happens, we're going to see different champs, different teams come in and out of the finals, and that's exciting. That forces the GMs to do what they need to do. And per our last live stream, you can look at our thoughts on the draft change as well, and that's just going to help that in that sense. It's going to suck for some teams, of course, but nonetheless, I don't like Adam Silver. I'll go and say that too, but I'd be hard pressed to say that anything he's done has really turned bad, at least in my eyes, even if it's affecting my team for the totality of the league, not just the Detroit Pistons. All right. So let's talk about it. Victor Wembanyama, he is the best 22-23-year-old I've seen. He was impacting every possession during even game 7. Ball movement was there, rebounding was there. Obviously, Spurs culture, we can go ahead and chalk that up to Shadow Hall. He's also on the podcast as well, and he's preach about Spurs culture. Offline, very salty conversation. Said that, hey, we should have got with Victor Wembanyama. He said, Jay, do you think the NBA really gonna let Victor go to the Pistons? And you know what? He may have cooked with that one. He may have cooked with that one, but here we are. And like when you look at what they were accomplishing with Fox beforehand, it's kind of like adding that creator, add another veteran ball handler, another pick and roll threat was going to take them to like another level. And here we are. Spurs are final bounds. And they're hitting there after eliminating one of the best teams we've seen in the last few seasons. Also has some historical fronts as far as defense as well. But like before we get into like individual like performances, I wanted to say I'm really thankful that we got the game 7 that we deserved, right? Because game 7s end up sometimes could be blowouts, and this wasn't. This game had everything. Every time the San Antonio created separation, OKC had an answer. Every time OKC looked ready to seize control, San Antonio responded. It was a punch, counter punch, punch, counter punch for 48 minutes straight. And I'm using those analogies because I am also a big fight person as well. And the series that everybody hyped up to be the future Western Conference series is something that we deserved, and it delivered. All right. I already knew that the rivalry was going to be big, especially for years. And then also you're having Chet and Wimby, which poor Chet. Um, Anywho, we knew that this was going to be a thing. Wimby's going to come there with something on his chest, shoulders. He was ready to go. He wanted that back in blood, and he actually cared. And that was confirmed after the tears he dropped when they won. Um, because no matter how complicated everything got, the stars showed up. This was a Wimby moment. It was Victor Wembanyama versus SGA, which we was playing the Chet thing, but let's just be real with star versus star. And the game 7 came down to your best players. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with SGA. All right. So SGA deserves still a ton of credit. This is one of the best playoff performances, not percentage wise as far as shots, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at that. But everything we've seen from first half, especially, was unbelievable. He was getting easy looks. He wasn't getting separation. And he was suddenly finding himself in defensive weakness, but there were some difficult shots, and he still made them all series. Sorry, let me go and readjust. The difference tonight, he made them contested pull ups, mid range, fadeaways, total finishes, everything for the stretch of the game. He physically refused to let Oklahoma City die. He learned to not go directly in the paint, kind of do folders, step backs in the mid range, get into his bag of what he's like really known for. And honestly, if it wasn't for SGA, this probably would have been a double-digit victory for the Spurs. They were going up and down, and then it was actually pretty much a butt whipping throughout the most part. The writing was on the wall pretty early, in my opinion, but you can't just count anyone out. But this would have been very much so a terrible series. Okay. Um, Tonight, though, he went down swinging. He fought. And that's all you got for the superstar. Victor. All right. All right. So where do I start? Like Victor came out there shooting like a two guard, right? A 7'5" two guard in the beginning. Every possession, OKC had to account for him. You saw every time he rolled to the rim, he pulled defenders. Every screen forced rotations. Every cut demanded attention. And because OKC was so focused on Victor, San Antonio generated quality shots after quality shots. The Spurs shot 17 for 40 from the three. And those came directly from the gravity of Wemby, which he creates. He isn't impacting just points. The way he bent the floor defensively, the blocks were great, the steals were great, but that's not what makes him exactly special. It's the shots. That never happen. We had a conversation about Rudy, how he, deterred people from there. This is like a version on steroids because Wemby just can move fluent, right? And it was the players who turned the corner, see him standing there, and suddenly they say, I don't want to attack anymore. I don't want that. That's why I give SGA his credit as well, because he went going to the rack when that Wemby thing switch mid range, boom. So, shout out and praise to the the MVP, of course. Even though the unethical flopping is insane, right? But those possessions never show up on the stat sheet. And I feel like, but it's a win for the defense. And throughout the series, like OKC struggled to generate quality offense when Victor was on the floor. But as great as Victor was, the reason Spurs won was because of everyone else. Every starter scored double figures. 2 bench players scored in double figures. 7 players reached double digits. This is championship basketball, and Julian Champagnie, 20 points, 6 threes, no hesitation. Every time the ball touched his hands, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Shoot it, confident, aggressive, and without second guessing himself. And that's something that's brought up previously on our live stream, that Spurs are better when they're not a shooting team, but when they have those shooters that show up, that's Spurs basketball. All right. So they executed without fear, trusting their key players. Stephon Castle, UConn for sure. So I do have some stock in Spurs, right? I'm a UConn fan, diehard UConn fan. So I had to pick somebody that I wanted to win. Obviously, outside of just looking at this on the paper and stuff like that, it would have been it's the Spurs. So I'll quickly move on to that. Dylan Harper looked completely comfortable in Game 7, and that's not talked about enough. He's a rookie on the road, Western Conference Finals. He looked fearless. Big shot after another big shot, big rebound after another big rebound. The kid is going to be special. I had a high grade on him. Personally, I had him up there with the Coops, in my honest opinion. Franchise changing, and maybe didn't show as much during the season, but the fact that he was still entrusted in that role on a championship run says a lot. And last but not least, De'Aaron Fox deserves a lot of credit too. 15 points, felt like 25. Every time OKC threatened to make a run, Fox had an answer. Floater, mid-range, transition, 3. His scoring wasn't explosive. It wasn't nothing crazy, but it was timely. And just like how the refs call those fouls, timely matters. Sometimes time beats speed every time. It's an analogy that we've seen throughout different sports. And it just meant more volume this time. Then you had Keldon Johnson, big offensive rebounds, energy, big 3. The type of people and the type of teammates that contribute that don't always dominate the headlines, but they're swing players in the playoffs. Um, and that's big because I forgot what podcast talked about like he was a swing player. I think Draymond said that about Nick Young. said that about Nick Young. But I mean, we have to look at everybody like play going down there. Luke Kornet, historic block. I mean, he got on the podium and said, which one is more impactful, me, mine, or LeBron? I mean, that's a dicey thing to say, but it wasn't just a block, y'all. The momentum was there. They was going downhill with it, and he broke that up. He hustled. Hartenstein looked like he had like an uncontested dunk. It was over. Crowd exploded. Kornet came out of nowhere. Boom. Changed the building, energy in the building shift. You could feel it. If you were watching it, you may have been hyped at home, depending on who your team is. You may be Knicks, maybe not, But that's one of those big things. That's gonna be something to remember. And it's going to be one of those things like you had to be here. You had to be here to understand it. Okay. And unfortunately, let's go ahead and move the chat. It's not about missing shots. Everybody miss shots. Everyone has bad nights. This is about like the engagement. This is about responsibility. It's about showing up when your team needs you. And Chet took 2 shots. 2, game 7 at home. One of your big 3. With Jalen being out, straight up. And it's the finals on the line. That can't happen. I don't care how good the defense is, which he probably did as much as he can. Personally, I'm not exactly excited on that end of it, but I'll give him credit to that. It doesn't matter what matchup you're facing. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable you are. You cannot just vanish, especially when SGA is doing everything as far as offensive burden. And they did some trickery things to make him get off ball and help, but like even when he's off ball, he's still doing SGA things. Your team needs secondary scoring. Everyone in the arena knows you're one of the most talented players on the floor. And there were possessions where Chet caught the ball and didn't even look at the basket. Like the lights was too bright. Jared Allen. And for a player that at that caliber is supposed to be that caliber, unacceptable. So, that's the difference. He never forced the issue, honestly. And missing shots is one thing, but refusing to take them, that's another. Live by the gun, die by the gun, as you should. And that's going to be the question that OKC is going to have. We already see that the Giannis thing is rolling in and stuff like that. And I'm not going to get necessarily into that because I don't want to take anything away from the Spurs win, and them going to the finals. So simple as that. Wow. Spurs, story, what a season, what a moment. And the possessions were late, perfectly captured everything in the organization represents. The ball swung from side to side, player to player. Everybody touched the ball. They even, everybody got involved. Even eventually, like Devin Vassell for a 3, he missed it. But honestly, we didn't care because the possession itself isn't vintage Spurs basketball. It's the movement. That's something we knew. Trust, patience, and selflessness. That's Spurs basketball. And I can't say that, that's anything different than what we see, honestly. When at the peak of their powers. And Victor Wembanyama has officially arrived. Let us play. Let us pray, I'm sorry. The future's here. And now we have the Knicks. Okay. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about a little bit of history. It's a rematch. 27 years in the making. 1999, finals revisited. So, that's going to be a banger. I don't count Knicks out. Please don't count Knicks out. Anything can happen at this level. They haven't been pushed by the East, but I'm not going to go in depth with that. This is for the Spurs. Congratulations, Spurs fans. Just because y'all got one of the best generational players, doesn't mean that you didn't have to put a team around them. So congrats to the GM, coach, and we'll see y'all next week. Have a good weekend.